Welcome back to Seminar Citra Pariwara 2020. And for the next session would be the very last session of the day, the rebirth of advertising with Glenn Smith, Creative Director of Southpaw, London. After all the many issues we have faced this year, Glenn Smith believes the strongest story archetype to feature in advertising as we rebuild our lives and aim for a better future is the rebirth of advertising. The rousing talk will educate and inspire, leaving viewers pumped for the next year and the hope for a new, better, more creative world. Ladies and gentlemen, saat lagi kita akan terhubung dengan Glenn Smith yang telah menghabiskan lebih dari 20 tahun membantu beberapa merek terbesar di dunia mengembangkan reputasinya melalui kekuatan bercerita. Dia memulai karirnya di Leith Agency di Skotlandia sebelum pindah ke beberapa agensi di London termasuk Y&R dan WCRS. Dengan Southpaw, dia telah menciptakan narasi dasar untuk merek internasional termasuk Honda, Suzuki, Brown-Forman, Diageo, Eurotunnel, dan juga GHD. Without any further ado, please welcome Glenn Smith. Hi Glenn, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly and so clear. And good morning, London, by the way.
Good morning. Yes, it's actually a nice morning today. I hope everybody's still awake and ready your end.
Of course you are, and we cannot wait to listen to your story about the rebirth of advertising. So, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Let's roll the VT. Hello, selamat sore, apa kabar semua? Semoga semua baik-baik. My name is Glenn Smith. I'm the creative director at Southpaw. We are Hakuhodo's largest agency in Europe. One of the privileges I get as being part of the Hakuhodo network is my annual trip to Tokyo to judge and to celebrate the best work from the Hakuhodo international offices. This is me. I'm always easy to find as I'm the only one with a bright pink face. But I must say, every year, it's the work from the Indonesia office that impresses me the most. You guys have a really, really strong creative culture here. And, you know, I must confess, had you told me 12 months ago that I would be closing the show at Citra Pariwara from 7,000 miles away over something called Zoom, having spent most of my year fighting to keep my clients, to keep my employees, to keep my sanity, I would have thought you were joking, but here we are. 2020, ladies and gentlemen. And what a story it has been, and what a story 2020 will be in the future. In years to come, we will be asked the question, where were you in 2020? What happened to you in 2020? What about all the lockdown babies? An estimated 100 million new human beings born this year. What will their story be? Now, I'm saying this because we remember stories more than we remember facts. We won't look back at 2020 and remember the data. We'll remember how it made us feel. It will be a powerful and emotional story, and that's why we will remember it. The same rules apply to advertising. Storytelling is the most powerful weapon we have in our profession. This poster for Pirelli was the reason I got into advertising. I was studying graphic design in the early 1990s, and someone showed me this. I couldn't believe you could get so much storytelling into one image. Firstly, it's a great use of character. This is Carl Lewis, for all the kids watching. He was the Usain Bolt of the 1980s. We see his face, we see his facial expression. That alone tells a story, but also the sense of place. Notice how we can see all of him, where he is. Then there's the visual twist, the power of the headline, the tone, the mood, the composition. But now look at this, from 15,000 years ago. Now I imagine that the early humans who saw this picture would get the same feeling I got when I saw the Pirelli poster. This isn't a picture of animals, it's a story. It's a story of a hunt. The more you look at it, the more it gives. The sense of drama, the sense of place, the feeling of speed, of danger. Storytelling is how we have navigated our world since the dawn of civilization. It gives us so much more than information. It gives us education. It gives us entertainment. It gives us moral values. It gives us meaning. The human brain has programmed itself to decode the world through storytelling because we connect with it, we remember it, we respond to it. And yet, recent studies have shown that storytelling in advertising is in decline. At Southpaw, we work very closely with these two organizations, the IPA, which stands for the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising, who are our governing body for advertising in the UK, and System One. They are a research company who specialize in advertising effectiveness. They have been conducting studies over the past 30 years into the effectiveness of UK and global advertising, and they have they've discovered an alarming trend. So this first chart is UK data, but I think it will be consistent globally. And it shows that in the year 2005, advertising campaigns basically stopped using storytelling, and that brands and agencies have not focused on using storytelling in a big way since then. But this combines with global data taken from the IPA in a similar time period, showing that the effectiveness of creatively awarded advertising is also going down. So campaigns that do well at the awards shows have become less and less effective for the businesses and the brands that they represent. Why is this? Well, the answer is because we don't use storytelling as much as we used to. Creative awards are led by creative people, and creative people, they respond well to ideas. But consumers prefer storytelling. That's how brands grow. So what makes good storytelling? Well, according to the guys at System One Research, the brain has evolved over time to be attracted to specific criteria when it comes to storytelling. So they are a clear sense of place, so things like depth and identifiable environments, not flatness. Expressive characters, the use of facial expressions to show emotions, and full images of people, so showing the whole body, not abstracted images or using just parts of the body. A scene unfolding, a sense of what's going to happen next, a twist in the plot, not directness or using quick symbolic gestures. Character relationships, not single people or no people at all. Dialogue, not monologue. And also music with a discernible melody, not repetition or high rhythmic sounds. So it seems obvious, why would you use any of the elements on the right-hand side to build a brand when the left-hand side is so full of creative opportunity and the right hand is so dull, right? So unfortunately, we can see since 2005 that there's been a distinct pattern that shows us that the traits that make strong emotive storytelling are being used less and less. Character, place, depth, a scene unfolding, versus flatness, abstraction, repetition. The advertising world is suffering its own creative crisis because it is in danger of ignoring its most powerful weapon, storytelling. So what's the cause of this crisis? Well, as in all good stories, it's complex. But as far as I can see, there are 4 contributing areas. The first one is a cultural downturn. The second is the rise of digital media. The third is short-termism. And the fourth is the need for authenticity. So let's just break these down a little. So the first one is a cultural downturn. This is Orlando Wood. He's the Chief Innovation Officer at System 1 Research. He's a very clever man. He's written a book on how the brain decodes advertising called Lemon. And he's kindly given me permission to use some of the content here, but in no way can I do it justice in a few minutes. So I would urge any agency interested in how to create greater effectiveness in their work to go and buy this book. In one of the most fascinating chapters, Orlando describes how European art changed over time, depending on whether society was being governed in a rational, controlled, and conservative way, or an emotional, free, and liberal way. So just take a look at this example from ancient Rome. And this is between one emperor who ruled with a sense of democracy versus one who ruled as a dictator. So on the left, the democratic ruler is portrayed with a clear sense of character and lots of depth. On the right, the dictatorial ruler is portrayed with flatness and zero facial expression. And this trend continues for 2,000 years. In medieval art, a time of chaos and tyrant kings, we see flatness and symbolism. So the important people are big and the poor people are small, versus the Renaissance, where we see depth, expressive facial features, character relationships, a scene unfolding. Then we go to the Reformation. This is a time of strict religious order, and everything is tightly ordered and it's organized as though giving us facts and information. On the left, we see it's like the art version of a spreadsheet, versus the Baroque period, a time of free trade and globalization. And here we see incredible depth and a true sense of place, an image that invites us in to explore. And then we have the Enlightenment, a time when science starts to take over from spirituality, and we can see abstraction, parts of the body. Notice the all-seeing eye on the left, versus the Romantic period, where we see layers of depth and a clear sense of place with characters in their full, showing relationships with one another. And then to the Industrial Revolution, where the world becomes more mechanical and we see greater abstraction and symbolism again, versus the 1960s, free, liberal, experimental, where art becomes the vehicle for unpacking what it means to be human. So we see more emphasis on characters, environments, depth, relationships. So where are we now? Well, if we look at the events and issues that have affected society since the year 2000, we see environmental catastrophe, global economic crisis, we see religious extremism, gender and identity issues, we see mistrust in politicians, but also now with the virus, we see mistrust in our neighbors. We've also seen the birth of new industrial super economies, but what's come with that is an increasing gap between rich and poor. And at the heart of all this, we've had social media to deal with and all the negative effects that that's having, especially on our children. But that's our world in the last 20 years. In a word, you could say chaos. And what's the antidote to chaos? Well, it's control, it's systems, it's rational thinking, it's the need for instant solutions. Society affects culture, and culture affects creativity. Which leads me to the next reason, which is the rise of digital media. So digital media has revolutionized the way we live, absolutely, but it's also come with a side effect. 20 years ago, a chief marketing officer's world looks like this. So we've got TV, radio, press, out of home, direct mail, PR. But today it looks like this. So you can see there's a great transference of power that has happened as the digital world is integrated with the advertising world. And because of the way digital media is conceived, how it is designed, how it's distributed, we can see these themes emerging. So we get repetition, grid systems, flatness, directness, the need for quick actions, icons, symbols, emojis, abstraction, parts of the body rather than faces. Now, you may say this is, almost a practical necessity due to the fact that we consume most of our content on a very, very small screen. But that's, are we saying that you can't create emotional, engaging storytelling on your device? Well, of course not. So we embrace the power of storytelling on our phones all the time. With character, with depth, a scene unfolding, facial expressions, look at the power of Zoom. But the other side effect of digital comes from the concepts of big data, which takes me to the next reason, short-termism. So this is another amazing book that you should read. It's called The Long and the Short of It. It's a massive piece of research into how brands achieve long-term profitable growth. And it shows that brands who focus on short-term sales activation campaigns only ever achieve short-term growth, whereas brands who focus on brand building through storytelling achieve much higher growth and return on investment in the long term. So why do brands think more and more in the short term when the statistics clearly show it's a bad idea? Well, it's because we've become obsessed with data. We've become obsessed with measuring performance. We can get instant access to analytics, and it's become an addiction, and it's killing us. Brand building takes time, and to build a brand that will last and keep growing, you need to embrace storytelling. I really can't give you a better example of this than the John Lewis brand in the UK. Their annual Christmas TV commercial is now a cultural event in Britain. For me, they have achieved the highest honor a brand can achieve. They are a company society actually wants to exist. And why is this? It's because they tell such good stories. And look at the consistent themes here. We see character, place, depth, a story unfolding. If you haven't seen the ads, go and find them. The final reason is the need for authenticity. So social media has led to such levels of suspicion, spin, fake news. And so as a knock-on effect, trust in brands has never been weaker. So the big word in advertising over the last few years is authenticity. And although it's important to be honest and to be true to yourself, we can't confuse that with playing it safe. We've become an industry desperate to tick every box, to try and please everyone. And that has made marketing safe. And safe is the most dangerous word in advertising. It literally kills creativity. So we're witnessing the most adverse conditions that our industry have ever faced. But adversity generates something more powerful. It generates creativity. Creativity is about problem solving. It is about ideas, but an idea isn't enough on its own. It needs to be brought to life. So this is a calling for a new era of brand storytelling. And I'd like to end by giving you some inspiration, a reminder of how great advertising storytelling can be and how you can achieve it. So according to Stephen Brooker in his book, The 7 Basic Plots, there are 7 fundamental ways to tell a story. Now let's see if you can recognize any of them and how you might be able to use them for your brands. So the first one is called Overcoming the Monster. This is the classic David and Goliath story, the story of the underdog who breaks convention to become the best. This story is great for tech brands and for brands who thrive off innovation. An amazing example of this is Ridley Scott's 1984 ad for Apple. Go check it out. The second one is called Rags to Riches. This is the story of transition over time, perfect for brands who wish to show high quality and strong heritage. If you haven't seen Johnny Walker's The Man Who Walked Around the World, go check it out. It's a great example of a rags to riches story. The third one is called The Quest. This story is focused on passion and determination. It's a story, it's often a metaphor that the journey is more important than the destination. This story is perfect for startup brands and brands who are consistently evolving. We can see Guinness surfers there. I'll say no more about that. The fourth one is called Voyage and Return. It's a close cousin to The Quest, but this time the emphasis is in the past. So what have you learned? This is a great story for brands in transition. So Nike's Dream Crazy featuring Colin Kaepernick is a fantastic example of this. Number 5 is comedy. So this is arguably the most effective form of storytelling. And it's a great opportunity to show a brand's personality, especially in FMCG brands and low-cost brands. If you're going to do comedy, though, you've got to go all out, just like Old Spice did. And number 6 is tragedy, obviously the sad story. Sadness is not an emotion that we're attracted to, but it can create impact. And the only brands who really use this are charities. If we could click so the next one comes up, please. The story of Eva on Instagram, thank you, for Kay's Galleries, this is a fantastic example of this. And If you look, it's by no coincidence that this page is filled with the themes that we've been talking about. So character, depth of surrounding, meaningful relationships, a scene unfolding, the whole body, strong facial expressions. But you'll also notice that there's one story missing, the seventh story. And it's the seventh story that I want you all to think about today. Because the seventh story is the story of rebirth. The story of rebirth is arguably the most inspiring. It's a story of a new dawn, a new horizon, a change for the better. 2021 must be the year we use our greatest weapon to define a new era. Look for stories of rebirth in your agencies. Ask yourself, what kind of agency do we want to be? What kind of agency can we be? Look for rebirth stories in your brands. How can they pick up the pieces of 2020 and come back fighting? Look for rebirth stories in yourselves. How can you look after yourselves and each other better, especially your mental health? The story of rebirth will be the story of 2021. And before I go, I'd just like to show you an example of the power of the rebirth story. So this is an ad that was played at halftime in the Super Bowl in 2012 as America was picking itself up after the biggest financial crisis in almost 100 years.
It's halftime. Both teams are in their locker room discussing what they can do to win this game in the second half. It's halftime in America, too. People are out of work and they're hurting, and they're all wondering what they're gonna do to make a comeback. And we're all scared because this isn't a game. The people of Detroit know a little something about this. They almost lost everything. But we all pulled together. Now Motor City is fighting again. I've seen a lot of tough eras, a lot of downturns in my life, times when we didn't understand each other. It seems that we've lost our heart at times. The fog of division, discord, and blame made it hard to see what lies ahead. But after those trials, we all rallied around what was right and acted as one. Because that's what we do. We find a way through tough times, and if we can't find a way, then we'll make one. All that matters now is what's ahead. How do we come from behind? How do we come together? And how do we win? Detroit's showing us it can be done. And what's true about them is true about all of us. This country can't be knocked out with one punch. We get right back up again, and when we do, the world's gonna hear the roar of our engines. Yeah, it's halftime America, and our second half's about to begin.
Creativity will prevail. Go write the story. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Glenn Smith, who's just inspired us with a story of the rebirth of advertising. Thank you so much, Glenn. Thank you for your time, and have a good day. Dan sekarang telah berakhir sudah rangkaian seminar Citra Pariwara 2020. Namun sebelum saya menutup acara hari ini, sesaat lagi saya akan umumkan para pemenang dari kuis sesi 1, 2, dan 3. Sesaat lagi. Terima kasih untuk Anda yang telah mengikuti kuis sesi 1, 2, dan 3. Dan ini dia pemenang untuk kuis sesi 1. Selamat untuk Yohanes Paulus, Rangga, Samuel, EP Iruth, kemudian Mazaya, dan juga selamat untuk Stanley Lucius. Itu dia pemenang untuk kuis sesi 1. Saat lagi kita akan lihat pemenang sesi kedua. Selamat untuk Stefani, Nadia Mahatmi, Ovita Patari Purnama Jaya, Intan Sabila, dan Rianti Tara Pratita. Selamat, dan ini dia pemenang sesi ketiga dan sesi terakhir. Selamat untuk Ainun, Afi Kresna, Jaslyn, Sandu, dan juga Riani Oktaviani S. Selamat untuk semua pemenang yang berhasil mendapatkan mini trofi Citra Pariwara 2020 yang bisa diambil dengan menghubungi pihak sekretariat, atau Anda bisa menghubungi juga WhatsApp di nomor 0812 897 00068. Sekali lagi, WhatsApp 0812 897 00068. There you go. Lalu saya ucapkan terima kasih untuk semua pihak sponsor yang telah membantu seminar Citra Pariwara 2020. Thank you untuk MLD Spot, Amtech Group, SCTV Indosiar Video, IM3 Uridu, Kompas Gramedia Group, Harian Kompas, Kompas ID, Kompas.com, Kompas TV, Grid ID, Tribun News, Kementerian Pariwisata dan Ekonomi Kreatif, BCA, MNC Media, RCTI, MNC TV, GTV, iNews, RCTI Plus, dan MNC Portal. Terima kasih juga untuk Facebook, Nielsen, Metro TV, RTV, Antv, Jawa Pos, Kaskus TV, First Media, Trans TV, Trans 7, Gash Cloud, IndiHome, dan juga TV One. Terima kasih juga kepada para agensi sponsor yang telah mendukung acara ini, Densu Indonesia, Aisobar, Dwi Sapta, Hakodo Indonesia, Lotus, IDEC Indonesia, Think Tank, Vlog Creative Network, dan juga FAB Group. Terima kasih untuk partisipasi Anda di seminar Citra Pariwara 2020. Dan saat lagi, tepat jam 5 sore, kita akan menyaksikan Awarding Night Citra Pariwara 2020 yang bisa Anda saksikan di channel Kaskus TV. Saya Aldo Terangan, pamit dari seminar Citra Pariwara 2020 dan sampai bertemu sesaat lagi di Awarding Night Citra Pariwara 2020.
Mungkinkah ku bayar belanja tanpa sentuhan?
Mungkin dong, hanya HP